Hopefully these will work if the light's shining on them. Ah, the light's really shining. Okay, let's look in this camera. These are called vice grips, I believe, and they are completely metal, which means they could short circuit things if I'm not careful, so I have to be really careful. I'm gonna be back in a minute. I'm gonna go get a tool of some sort that I can grab the thing with, because it is the nice hexagon. Yeah, the nice hexagon shape on the top. If you can see that at all, not sure if you can see that, but yeah. So I'm gonna grab something that I can turn it with, get these things in, especially this one because it needs to be down as far as possible to keep the ports as low as possible. So I'll be back. Hopefully these will work. If the light's shining on them. Ah, the light's really shining. Okay, let's look in this camera. These are called vice grips, I believe, and they are completely metal, which means they could short circuit things if I'm not careful, so I have to be really careful. At least I think they can short circuit things. Also, they are designed to have a very strong grip if you set them up that way, so let's try to loosen them to where the grip won't be too strong, because we don't want to break the standoff by squeezing too hard on it. But yeah, this is what I found in the basement, so that's why I'm using this. We do have other tools somewhere, but this was the first thing that I saw. So let's go ahead and try to get this thing. Let's try to get this thing clamped. Basically, for those of you guys who haven't seen this before, basically how it works is you clamp on something. In this case, you clamp on the thing itself, and the things go together, and you can squeeze it tight, and then it kind of locks in place, and it's locked shut, and so you can screw it and stuff. You don't have to keep squeezing the whole thing. And then this little piece down here, you pull that to unlock it. That's basically how it works. So let's loosen the loosening thing. In order to get it big enough, that's too big. In order to get it big enough to grab the standoff, we don't need it to be very tight around it, but we do need it to grab it and not let go. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's try like this. Okay, that's pretty close. Let's try maybe a 1/8 of a turn. And that's not enough of a turn. Okay. There we don't go. We're getting pretty close though. Let's turn it a little bit more. And okay, that is not the right size. It was almost the right size. I think it has a little bit of spring in it, so you kind of have to clamp it, but if we don't clamp it too hard, then it should be okay. It should be okay. There we go. There we go. Is that actually turning the thing? Yes, it is turning it. Okay, let's go ahead and... Okay, so this is going to be a bit tedious because I have to unclamp it every time, because it's in such a small space in the case. So you have to unclamp it and then turn the thing, and then reclamp it, rather than the regular tools where you just go ahead and, you know, like the pliers and stuff, where you just go ahead and hold it and then let go and then hold it. This one you have to actually do the unclamping thing every time, but it is done, and I think it's not quite tight enough. I think I'm not grabbing it properly. Okay, let's do it a little bit tighter. A little bit tighter, not too tight though. Not too tight, because if it is too tight, then it could squeeze the standoff so much that it breaks. And I think that this is good. I think that this is good. Is it actually turning the thing? Yes, it is. Okay, it is turning the standoff. And if we let go now, then we'll hit the fan. So let's... There we go. Okay, this is a dangerous operation. Dangerous operation. Is it far enough down yet? It is it seems to be moving a little bit now. I think it got past the tight space. Well, it got past the super tight space into the very tight space. So that's that's an improvement. Because it's always possible that the way it's supposed to screw down, that there's one thing in one mistake in something that, or one inconsistency in the screwing thing somehow, so it gets stuck somewhere, and then once you actually screw the thing past it, then it works. Oh, this seems to be screwing fairly easy now. Is it? Ah, now I can turn it, sort of, just about. It came from the super tight space down into the very tight space, and now into the more than tight but less than very tight space. And okay, it looks like maybe another half turn, and now, oh, it just went from the less than very tight space down into the tight space of tightness measurement, if you measure it on a tightness graph. Anyways, there we go. I think it is down sufficiently. This one over here is probably not worth tightening that much because it's not really gonna mess with the height on anything. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to take this plate and take the plate out because it will not fit where it's supposed to go, because the ports will be just a little bit too tall. So my theory is that what we can do, if I don't know if you could really see that on camera before, but you basically had the ports were here, and then it just exaggerating, okay? Exaggerating. It's like you had the ports were here, they stuck out, and then there was the end of the ports, like for the USB and things like that. And then this thing was like a little bit distant from it. Exaggerating, obviously, but distant from it, and so you essentially had this floating in. Well, it was, some of the ports were longer than others, so some of them went through it, others didn't. But I think for all of them, we can push it back a bit, so sit it actually on the ports, which should give the case wall is here, so it should give it just enough clearance to get past the case wall and go up just a little bit underneath it. I think we shall see. We shall see. We shall see. We shall see. Okay. Now, where can we grab the motherboard? We need to put it onto a flat surface that's over this way a bit more. So let's go ahead and do that. I think we can only grab it from the edges and get this up over the motherboard, not underneath. We don't want wires going underneath that we're going to have to try to get out later out of a difficult situation. Okay, there we don't quite go. There we don't quite go because it's stuck on a wire from the power supply down here. There's wires everywhere. Trying to reseat a motherboard while it is plugged in is not an easy task. However, once it is accomplished, it may prove to be a efficient way of doing things. Possibly, we shall see. Anyways, let me make sure that this thing does have a lot of. Let's go over here so where you can see it. This thing does have a lot of tabs and things that stick into places, and just making sure that none of them are in the way, and it looks like none of them are in the way, so that's good. So now let's go ahead and stick it on here. This is going to be difficult, and unfortunately I don't have enough hands to hold the second camera at the same time. This needs to move down a little bit this way, down a little bit that way, to that side, in order to get this thing to fit. I think that we can get it around the ports. Okay, there we go. We can push it right back against the ports, and hopefully it will fit there. Hopefully it's something is making it spring forward. Something is making it spring forward, but that might be okay. Okay, so now try to hold this in place with one hand, hold that in place with one hand, and push the motherboard this way to where it lines up with the screws, so that then we can put the screws in. That is easier said than done. However, it may be done fairly easily. Well, maybe not easily, but it should get accomplished within the relative amount of... Oh, something is not right. Something is not right. Something is underneath the motherboard. Something is underneath the motherboard. Okay. Because something is pushing the motherboard up where it's not supposed to be pushed up. So that is not too good. Let's see if we can see. Let's see through lifting the entire case. What is under... Oh, it's just simply that one standoff that we didn't bother to screw in all the way is lifting the whole motherboard up so that it won't reach down on that side. Okay, so looks like we need to actually lift the whole thing up again. I think all we need to do is tilt it up this way, though. I think that is all that we need to do. And once that is done, then we can screw in the final screw all the way, because it's actually sticking up about... You guys can't really see it because it's too small, but it's sticking up about this much, which is about maybe 2 millimeters or something, which is enough to make it that we would have to actually bend the motherboard in order to get it to screw into all of them, which is not very good. And why is this not tilting up? What is it stuck on? Okay, there we go. And now that it is up, okay. If it will stay there, then we can screw this in. Let's see if you can actually see it on the other camera before screwing it in. Let's see about this. Okay, so down here you can see this is the standoff that is up above the board. If you can see that, it is, there's the screw right there is sticking up. This one is down flush with the board, just for comparison, whereas this one is sticking up, so we need to screw it in a lot more. So that is that. So, let's get to it. Let's use our dangerous tools that could short-circuit the motherboard, and let's try to get this done without any damage such as that, because that would not be very good. Although it shouldn't short-circuit anything because there's no power to anything, so that's good. That is very good indeed. And it's coming down successfully. Whoop, and the motherboard is coming down successfully. Okay, let's go ahead and fix that. I think it's almost... Oh, now it can be screwed by hand. It's got past the tight spot. And it shall find its way down to the case. There we go. Okay, now... Okay, now that is done. Now, let's go ahead and tilt this thing down into the case without breaking anything. Get this wire out from underneath it. And then let's go ahead and get it all the way down without pulling any wires, without scratching the board, without anything like that. And come on, get... Okay, I think it's in place. Let's get it around the power supply wires. Oh, it's not quite in place. Let's go ahead and lift it a bit more and get it down this way. Okay, there we go. And now we need to actually push it up a bit more, or down a bit, toward the power supply. Depends on your point of view, because this is the bottom of the computer and this is the top up here. So, now, here's the thing again. Let's go ahead and stick this thing on, stick it to the ports, and it's got the spring thing. Let's see if we can see that on camera, actually. Let's see if the springiness of the thing can be seen on camera. There we go. That's that. So you can sort of see the plate is away from the ports. If I, first of all, line it up, because it was falling down, but then push it in and it springs back out. it has a bit of a spring, which is good, I guess. That's to push it against the case so that it doesn't. Oops, what am I doing? I'm taking a picture. Okay, that's, I guess, to push it against the back of the case here so that it doesn't fall off or doesn't something. So let's go ahead and that's that. Okay. Now, once again, we need to push the motherboard this way, while holding the thing on that way. So it's gonna be a tight, complicated. It's gonna be a complicated thing to do, but I do believe that it is just about in place. Okay. And the back plate does not appear to want to fit. Oh, it might. It might fit. It might fit. It might not fit. Is there any extra pushing that I can do for the thing? Oh, it does appear that it can go down a bit. Oh, it appears that although the standoffs are higher, somehow, I guess because there's a little bit of wiggle room in the plate actually got in place, which is good. It's actually just about in the right place for where it's supposed to be, so that looks good. Let me just make sure that it's not in any of the ports. That is good. Okay. So the plate is where it's supposed to be, and because of the spring effect that I just showed you, the screws are not quite where they're supposed to be, but that's okay. Looks like you can, let me just pop the plate in place completely, because it's essentially there anyways. It does have a bit of a you have to push it into the case a little bit to get it in properly, but once it's in, then it should be good to go for the situation. Come on. Come on. Come on. It goes in one end and then it comes out the other, and then it's going in the first end again and then coming out the other end, and I think it made it and then popped out again. So we'll just have to leave it like that. Okay. Now, screws. Motherboard screws. Okay. That is done. The motherboard is in place. The back plate is in place. The standoffs are in where they're supposed to be, down at the level they're supposed to be at, which is good. Now, we need the screws. So, whew, that was tiring. Okay, let's go ahead and try to find some screws in here. Whoops, stepping on the headphone wire. Ah, okay. Let's see. There are, which ones are the motherboard screws? Which ones? Okay, let's go ahead and grab a standoff and see which motherboard screws fit. This is the bag of the parts that came with the case, by the way, or case, I guess. Yeah. So it just confused me because there's a speaker in here. If you can sort of see, no, you can't because it starts reflecting. This thing says speaker. It's a little for the beeps and stuff, the computer beeps. Whoops, leave that thing down there. Let's try which screw. Okay, how big are the screw threads? They are about maybe 0.8 millimeters, just judging by looking at it, just guessing. 0.8 millimeters-ish between each screw. Okay, here is a screw that has a flat head, not a flat head, but like a rounded head, whereas some of them have like rounded with then a flat thing that goes on out from it, whereas this is just rounded. A little bit like a flat mushroom. Let's see if this will actually screw into, yes it is, okay, it is indeed screwing into the standoff. So, that means that we have one of these, we need 6 of these. Thankfully the screws are not stripped, only the standoffs, at least, hopefully, actually, I didn't actually check that. Was it the screws or the standoffs that were stripped, but I think it was the standoffs. So, let's see. Let's see. Let's just grab 2 of these to start with. Okay. Now, one thing that he said, if I remember it, one thing that Brian said in the computer building video was that the first screw is the hardest one to get in, and then after that it gets easier. So, let's do that. The reason that the first screw is this the screwdriver? This is highly magnetized, the one that he was using. Oh, yes. Because I'm not sure how much you have to be careful of magnets around computers. Okay, here is the screwdriver that is hardly magnetized. Highly versus hardly. But it is magnetized. As you can see, there's the screw on the end. It is staying on the end. But don't blow on it, because it might fall off. Okay, so now to get this thing down without having the screw fall off of the thing, and also, okay, you know what? This thing has sprung out again, and it's not in alignment with the outside of the case, so it's not going out to the case. So let's just try to see if we can push it in place and push this in place. But I think what we need to do, because the one standoff got out of alignment and it's going to take too many hands to fix it. So I'm going to try to screw that one in first. That will give it a pivot point to be in the right place. And once it has a pivot point, it should be easier to do things. So let's not touch those capacitors that are right beside it. And I do believe that went in. Now let's go ahead and screw it down. Yes, okay. It is. I don't want to put it too tight yet. I don't want to put it tight at all because it's a pivot point at the moment. But it is nevertheless in, which is good. Now, to get the second one in, now that the motherboard will stay mostly in the place it is supposed to. Oh, there we go. Pushing the outside plate, and it just went in place. It just went in place. Did it actually go in place at both ends at once? It appears to have gone into place in both ends at once. There's still one bottom corner that's not quite in place, but that doesn't appear to be a problem. Now we should be able to push the motherboard. Yes, okay, using the pivot point so that it doesn't move this way. And now that this thing is properly in place, the plate on the end, and we can pivot the motherboard in place, and it actually goes in quite nicely once you counter the spring effect of the back plate. So let's go ahead and do this. I think it would be best. Would it be best to do that screw or that screw? That is the question. That is the question. Okay, so that bottom corner I was telling you about on that plate, I think that you need to actually put that bottom corner in place in order to, let's use the screwdriver to do it. You need to actually put that bottom corner in place in order to get the back screw to fit. Okay, so the bottom corner is sort of in place. It is in place, but now the top is out again. Okay, so this is just making things very, very difficult. Very difficult. It appears that on these back plates, at least on this one, it appears that you need to push it in more in the middle in order to get the middle to go in. Oh, okay, so the other end is not coming out. It's only this end. So it's this end is not going out. This end is, which is good. It used to be the top of both ends, but now it appears to be still sticking out a little bit from where it's supposed to be, but it appears to be mostly good. Can we push the motherboard into alignment with the screw? Not quite. Okay, can we pivot it this way to get the thing in? And okay, a little bit. Okay, there we go. Is that enough to get this thing, to get room to get this thing out of, okay, let's just go ahead and try to push against it. I think pushing against the outside plate enough 2. Okay, I think it's more or less in place. Let me just see. There's something there that looks like it may or may not be part of the exterior plate in a port. No, I think it's good. Okay. So, just so that you guys can see where it's at now, it doesn't look much different than before, but unfortunately I can't hold a camera while doing this at the same time. So, what we've got here, you can see on that end, the silver thing sticking out there, that's the plate. It's supposed to actually stick out this way from the case. And on this end, you can see that it is, you can hopefully see if it will focus. If it will focus, is what I said. That the silver plate, let's point with the screwdriver. The silver plate there is actually the black of the case is there, and the plate is actually inside. It's supposed to be outside, but for some reason it's not wanting to do that, like this side where it's the plate is sticking outside this way towards the outside of the case. So that is essentially what is going on right now. So that's why, because the plate is a little bit too far this way at this end, that has something to do with why the motherboard is not quite in alignment. But I think it could get into alignment fairly easily. Here's the big question. Should I push the motherboard or should I... Okay. I think this more or less went in place. Well, at least the top corner did, so that's good. Can the bottom corner go in? Why will it not? Why will it not? Oh, I think I just got it. I think I just got it. I think I just got it just like that. Maybe not quite, but improved. It went through a little bit. It went through to some degree, and hopefully we can get it through all the way. Okay. There we go. Well, it's definitely improved. Okay, I don't want to be pushing too hard against the plate and accidentally slip the screwdriver and scratch the board. That would not be good at all. And okay, I think that's close enough that we can actually put the screws in without a problem. I think it's close enough for that. Let's find out. Attach the screw, magnetized, and stick it down like this. Push the board a little bit just to make sure it's right, and then screw. And it appears to be going down very nicely. That is what we like to see. Tighten that a little bit, not too much. Let's leave it loose, and let's put the rest of them in, and then tighten it. So then tighten all the screws at once. So that is that. So we successfully got the plate in place, heightened the board, and the standoffs were taller than the old ones, but they appear to have not been an issue because the plate actually had some leeway in it, which is very good indeed. 4 of these screws are necessary. That is 2 of them. So if you guys would like to see rotating the CPU cooler, then I'll probably be doing a video about that as well. We shall have to see. But yeah, the CPU cooler is this big fan on top of the CPU, and it is how many screws? 3 screws. It is actually on backwards. It doesn't really matter which way it goes on, except that it is, we noticed after we had put it on, that it's hanging over on this side. It's hanging over the memory slot, so you can't really use that memory slot. And I was talking to Brian about it, and apparently if you switch it around now, it won't mess up the thermal paste too much. But if you wait until after the computer has dropped a screw. There's the screw. Okay. If you wait until after the computer has produced a lot of heat and the thermal paste has kind of been affected by the heat, then it's not as good, and you might have to actually reapply the thermal paste and stuff like that. But if you do it right now, it's probably good before the computer has produced a lot of heat. So that is the plan, is to do that. We shall see if it actually shall see how it actually works out. So that is 3 screws done. And that's that. So the CPU cooler is another thing. The memory, I think I might change the slot on that thing after changing the cooler, because it's in slot 4 right now, the memory. And I don't know if it really matters. Doesn't seem to. But it might as well be moved to slot 1 anyways. And let's go ahead and put the final screw into the motherboard. Final screw. And that is almost in. You can tell the difference in skill level between Brian, who has built, I think he said about 30 or 40 computers, and me. Because this video, I don't know how long it will be after clipping and stuff, but I've been recording for an hour just to get the motherboard reseated, whereas it took, well, I was going to say it took the two of us. It essentially took Brian, because he did most of the work and I did most of the watching. But it took him about an hour to build the entire computer, including putting in the power supply, putting in the fan CPU thing, and the memory, and the motherboard, and the everything. He did all of that in an hour, and plugging everything in about an hour, whereas it took, and I think it was, to put the motherboard in, I think it took him about 15 minutes. 15 minutes, I think. So there we go. Not tighten this too much. Don't want to squish the board, if that's possible. I don't know if it's possible, but don't want to find out. And this thing is now secure. This thing is now secure onto the case, and the back plate is in place, which is good. And it is not... maybe it is overlapping some of the ports. Okay, so I'm going to have to play around with that later sometime. It appears to be overlapping the ports a little bit, but that can be fixed later. It's an easily bendable plate, so perhaps I can just bend it out of the way. Okay, so this thing is now reseated. So that is that. And I think that's good to go. Let's just double check all of our plugs. We've got plugs. These ones are in place. These ones are in place. Oh yes, there's the SATA that was unplugged from the SSD, or not unplugged from the SSD, but the SATA from the SSD was unplugged from the motherboard. English is complicated. So there we go. Let's go ahead and put this back into the port. There we go. This plug is still in place and still secure. This is still secure. This is still secure. They are all still in their spots they're supposed to be in. The question is, did they sort of wiggle their way up a bit so they're not going to contact? But they all appear to be good. What about the CPU fan? Is still in place as well. Okay, that looks like everything is good. So we successfully reseated the motherboard, and that is that. So if you want to see other videos, if you want to see the building of the thing, how to not break your first computer build, demonstrated by someone who has a lot of experience in the subject, not me, but Brian, then go ahead and check out the computer build videos. If you want to see other things, such as turning around the fan, the CPU cooling fan, or installing CD drives and things like that, then let me know, or in the comment, or, well, I guess, yeah, you can let me know if you want, but I'm going to record those videos before this ever comes out anyways. But if you have any questions about anything, you can let me know that as well. If you have questions for Brian, I can try to ask him as well, and stuff like that. So, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and see you guys later. Bye-bye!